So we obviously spoke about you having a 9 to 5 as well around your podcast and the sort of influence side of thing, the content creation, working with My Protein like myself. How do you actually go about balancing it all? Like we've already sort of touched on it a little bit, but what is your sort of structure of working around things?
I'm fortunate that I work from home the majority of the time, and some people would have hated that during the C19 stuff, but I worked from home for like 4.5 years before that, so I was pretty used
Right.
to not necessarily going to the office, but I had clients pretty much from Birmingham up to and around Scotland, albeit I'm sometimes in London. So I do have travel in my work, but I would say 3 to 4 days minimum I'm at home on an average week. And then on a non-average week, I'm like 2 to 3 days traveling. So more often than not, I am working from home, which allows you a lot of time around your day, whether that's to get your steps in, whether that's to create some content between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. and 9 a.m., whether that's finishing up at 5:30 as I've done today and jump straight on a podcast with yourself, or jump on one of my own shows. And giving yourself that minimal commute time allows you to have a little bit more time. And I know some people don't want to hear that if they work in an office, but that works for me. Equally, making sure that my training is pretty much set in stone as a non-negotiable. You were talking about diary management earlier in terms of putting stuff down and knowing what's happening. I am pretty relentless in my planning of when I can train, especially when I've got travel with work. So if I know I'm in Manchester for 2 days next week, best believe I know what gym I'm using on the Tuesday evening, what gym I might use on the Wednesday morning if I need to, or when I get back to Glasgow on the Wednesday evening, how am I going to train, or is it a rest day? How am I going to get to the gym? What am I going to do? Having all these things planned in is absolutely vital, and I very much am a big fan of the term non-negotiables, and that means that when I am as stretched as possible, having certain things that always happen regardless of where my mood or my feelings are at, they happen anyway, whether that's preparing for a podcast and doing my research and having my questions and my topics ready, whether that's turning up to the gym or to hit legs, even if I've had a really stressful day and a lot of travel and I'm tired, whether that's going to an event with work until 10 o'clock at night, but knowing that I need to get up the next day and get a 6 a.m. train to Birmingham. These things just have to happen, and you have to sometimes fight through the inertia and the difficulty to make sure that they happen, and having those non-negotiables and those lines in the sand. And some of those things might be relatively easy, some of those things might be relatively hard, but it's all relative to who I am as a person, because some of those things that I do feel easy to me and they might find hard for others. Equally, somebody might have things that they find really easy, but I'm like, oh my god, I hate doing that, because we're all wired differently and we all have different things that we find are our strengths and our weaknesses.
Definitely, and I think it's when that motivation isn't there to do these things, it's where discipline kicks in and sort of kicks those tasks over the line. And I think we come from a very similar sort of background where obviously we've got the corporate side and we are pretty used to organising ourselves in general from that sort of standpoint. And then that we've allowed that to flow into our sort of hobbies outside of work. I do very similar. I block out time. Like I sit down every sort of Saturday or Sunday, plan out what I've got for the week, and basically just allocate like reasonable amounts of time. I think that's another thing. If you allocate a certain amount of time to something, that is how long it's probably going to take you. I think it's called Parkinson's law.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think you've just got to be very meticulous with it and stick to those timings. I have my set workouts that I do each week, whether they get done on, like you said, when you've got potentially a train coming home on Wednesday, is it going to be a rest day or is it going to go into the next day sort of thing? It's very much regardless of what I've got on during that week, those 4 or 5 workouts are getting done. And I think that's where a lot of people would probably benefit from, is if they're not in that sort of corporate environment where you do have to plan your time quite well, to start doing that sort of on, like I say, on a Saturday or Sunday. Plan your next week out, know what you've got on, and things are going to get probably a lot more likely to get done, especially when you get like those reminders up on your phone saying, right, it's time to go to the gym, let's go. It just gives you that sort of extra little kick, doesn't it?
I'm definitely wired in a way that benefits from routine and habits and planning.
Same.
But my more spontaneous friends, even the more spontaneous friends that maybe like to do things a bit more off the cuff, the most successful ones that I know still have certain things that are like cornerstones within their diary that always happen at similar times, because as human beings, even if you're somebody that likes new experiences and fun and novelty, there's still an element of my human mind still benefits from knowing that Thursday at 5 o'clock is when I do spin, or when I do Zumba, or when I do legs, or when I do whatever it is. These people still benefit from that, even if they are somebody that maybe optimizes for doing different things more often than not. They still know that there's certain things that always happen within their calendar. And I'm certainly somebody that benefits massively from that. But like you say, sometimes you do just have to fit things in based on other things coming up that are not more important, but more immovable. And it's funny that you mentioned the corporate world, because even some people that thrive in that space, and like look at the number of people in the corporate world that are actually obese now. Like if you look around an office, you'll look around, you'll be like, oh wow, like there's not that many people that are really looking after their health. And I hosted Jordan Syatt on the podcast, who was quite well known for coaching Gary V, so Gary Vaynerchuk, who is this incredible entrepreneur who didn't really look after his health until about 5-6 years ago, when he actually started getting coached by Jordan. And one of the revolutionary things that he did with him was basically being like, you know that meeting that you have for... He basically will book back-to-back dinners from like 6 p.m. all the way through to like 11 p.m. at night. He was like, in the way that you do that and book all these dinners with investors and different companies and whatever else you're doing, the gym session that I'm telling you needs to happen 3 or 4 days a week needs to be booked in your diary as well. And he was like, oh, like I'd never thought of it like that. And he basically booked these in as meetings. So his gym session became meetings. So I think people can benefit massively from that, in the same way that you know that at 10 o'clock every Tuesday you have your teams catch up with your colleagues. Maybe at lunchtime every Thursday needs to be your gym session, or every Tuesday at 6 p.m. is when you do your gym session. Come rain, come shine, that needs to happen. Yeah.
Well, that's like I'm quite flexible if things can move. If something comes up that's maybe less immovable, I am flexible in moving things around, and I do leave sort of space to go. This is your fun time. Like, do whatever you want. Like, there's nothing planned, so spend it how you want. And but yeah, some people do just need that little prompt to sort of, like I say, kick them up the arse a little bit. Even if it's like, get your steps done. Like it could be a little prompt that just pushes you to sort of get up and go and do something. Because I find especially a lot of people in the office do tend to just sit through the lunch quite often. And I think quite a lot of people I've found think they are more busy than they actually are. There's a lot of things that people do. Well, a lot of people procrastinate throughout the day. I do it sometimes myself, and I'm like, oh, I've done not a lot for the last half an hour. But yeah, I think people think they're a lot busier than they actually are. So if they actually started prompting these other things, then I think they get their stuff done in a lot shorter space of time to allow them to do these things. And I've found a lot of, especially I've been in the corporate world for the last 8.5 years, quite a lot of things can go over into the next day. They don't have to be done that day. And I think a lot of people kill themselves to try and get something done, when by the time you've finished that, the person that you were meant to send it to has already finished. He's at home with the kids having dinner. So regardless of whether you send it them at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday or first thing in the morning on the Wednesday, it doesn't make any difference, because that's when they're going to see it.
It's funny,
and
isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm a big believer that discipline equals freedom in work. And if
Massively.
I can concentrate and not procrastinate and try and stay off my personal phone during the hours of 9 till 12 in particular, I tend to have like 3 really deep focused hours of like work on my actual day job. And by doing that, I definitely find I have a higher level of output than the average employee, and it's allowed me to progress my career to a really good extent in the business development world, in terms of I'll do a lot of my prospecting, I'll do a lot of my emails, I'll do a lot of my presentations first thing in the morning, and then my more reactive work with people coming back to me and maybe existing meetings that I've got booked will be in the afternoon. And that allows me to have an element of structure to my day, but also an element of productivity that I know I've ticked off the major boxes. So if I get 3 hours of good work done in the morning, that might be more than most people get done across like an 8-hour period, because I've just had like really high quality work during that time, and I've not been distracted by Instagram, TikTok, or WhatsApp or anything like that. Like, some people actually joke that if they get a WhatsApp from me between like 9 and 12, they're like, oh fuck, like what are you doing on your phone? And obviously that slips sometimes. We're all human, and devices are very, very powerful when it comes to grabbing our attention. But doing the thing that we said we're going to do and sitting in the task and getting it done in those moments allows me to be more free in the afternoon to maybe pick up my phone and post a reel on Instagram or post a story or email back a podcast guest to get organised, and it frees up a lot more time, and it means that I am able to finish at 5:30 to go and train or to do another podcast or to go to the golf range or go to the football or see a friend socially, whatever it is, because you've done the work that you said you were going to do in the time that you said you were going to do it and committed to it.
Yeah, I think that's very key that people have got to sort of take away, because like I say, when the work starts going into your sort of free time, the sort of hours outside your paid working hours, then people start using that as a crutch as to why they've not gone to the gym or why they've not done the things that they said they were going to do. Oh, I was working till 7 o'clock, I had to get home and make the tea, and then by that point it was 8 o'clock and it was too late because my favourite show was on. And it's having that discipline to sort of give yourself that work-life balance. And I think, I see it quite a lot. Like I say, people make themselves busier than they necessarily have to be.
Yeah, undoubtedly. And in the same way, like you say, your work day can extend into your personal hours. Your personal hours can extend into your work day if you're blasting 20 minutes of TikTok here and there between meetings. And one of the things that I learned from Cal Newport's book, Deep Work, is that it takes us around 18 minutes after we've had a notification or checked a notification to get back into the same level of flow and deep work as you were previously. So that's a bit of a frightening thought when it comes to maybe checking Instagram for 2 minutes. You've actually disrupted the quality, maybe not the amount of work, but the quality of your work for up to 18 minutes afterwards, which is absolutely crazy if you think about what a work day looks like in terms of time. If you're losing 18 minutes every time you check your phone, you're going to be pretty fucked.
Yeah, if you do it once an hour, it adds up, doesn't it, across the whole day?
Yeah, deadly. Yeah,
Wow.
Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world, but it can work negatively as well. So yeah, it's definitely a funny one. I think if you have some sort of boundaries, particularly digital boundaries, like I'm not, because of the amount of content I'm posting and creating, it is hard to be a digital nomad, but I am a minimalist when it comes to certain things. So like I'll try and be phone free between 9 p.m. at night and 8 a.m. in the morning, and that means that I'll have like my phone on charge at 9 o'clock. I'll wake up in the morning, I'll do my morning routine, which will typically be hydrate, bit of stretching, go for a walk, journal, and then I'll engage with my phone. But during that time, I will have a podcast on that's been pre-downloaded, and I'll be like, hey Siri, play whatever podcast it is, and it'll play and it's pre-downloaded. And it just means that I'm not necessarily like engaging with WhatsApp, Instagram before 8 a.m. and I've almost served myself first. And I do find that my focus as the day goes on is so much better if I've not engaged with my screen straight away. And Andrew Huberman's sharing all sorts of data now that your actual brain waves are different if you engage with your phone first thing in the morning, and it dictates your mood as well. So say you got a notification from a WhatsApp where you were getting pelters from in the group chat or a friend or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whatever, and they were giving you a hard time, you'd be like, oh fuck, it really messes with your mood early on. By serving yourself first, listening to something stimulating, by stretching, by journaling, by getting your thoughts out or planning your day or whatever it is that you choose to do, or meditating, whatever floats your boat, you give yourself the best opportunity to do really well. And I find that my best days are when my morning routine's been strong and I've started well, and my evening routine the day before has been good too, where I've come off my phone, I've read, I've journaled, I've relaxed, I've felt good.
I think it's something that I definitely need to get better at, and I am trying to sort of work on. Like you say, like we're both posting that much content, it's hard not to be on these things. And then it only takes one little sort of reel, and then you're scrolling for 20 minutes and you didn't even realise it. And then, like, I've got, you post your podcast content on your sort of main page, don't you? I've got a podcast account, I've got my fitness account, and then I've got the same for YouTube, and I've got the same on TikTok. So I've essentially got 6 accounts where, don't get me wrong, I'm posting the same content across 3 of them in sort of short form content clips.
Of course.
But it doesn't take that long for you to sort of get hooked on a little, like in a wormhole, essentially. That's what I call it. But
of course it does. You really do fall down that trap, and it's easy to end up consuming when you post. But yeah, like if you can have relative discipline, post, show up, come off, and then have set blocks when you go and do it. Like, again, one of the most incredible authors that I've had on the show has been Nir Eyal, who's the author of Indistractable, which is all about channeling our focus, doing the things that we're saying we're going to do. And he's very much of the opinion if you batch things, you can do better. So if you say, for example, between 4:30 and 5 p.m, I'm going to have my phone and I'm going to post this reel, I'm going to reply to comments, I'm going to reply to DMs during this period, and then at 5, if you have a hard stop and you commit to that, you're probably more likely to not extend through that and waste time and have dead time, and you're going to make the most of the 30 minutes that you have chosen to engage with Instagram. But that's like, it's so hard to do, but if you build that as a habit, and I know that between like 8 a.m. and 9 a.m, like for that hour before I start real work, I'm quite good at just posting, doing my stories, doing my reels, doing my TikTok, doing my YouTube, whatever it is. And then between 9 and 12, it's like full work mode, and I have like a real shift in identity. I'm work Colin and I'm content creator Colin at different times. Yeah,
I think it is difficult, especially when you're doing both. Because obviously I've got my PT business as well on Instagram, so I might be messaging people on Instagram as well, potentially throughout the day. If I check a little, have a little check, I may have a couple of messages. I've always had this issue. I mean, it's good and it's bad. I hate leaving people waiting for a message. Say if I've seen it, I'm replying straight away. And then if I get another message before I've gone off my phone, I'm replying to that one. It's just, I think one of the things is I don't want to forget that I had a message there, and I don't want to leave someone waiting for 2 days. But yeah, it's definitely something I need to work on and get that balance.
I definitely consider myself to be really responsive, but I would say in the last 6 months, when the podcast has grown a lot, maybe not even necessarily Instagram, but the engagement for the podcast in terms of Instagram messages has grown. It's been harder to keep track of my DMs than ever before. But I do tend to try and reply as much as possible. And one of the main tricks or hacks that I've got, particularly if somebody listening to this as a creator, is doing Instagram DM replies on your laptop. So that's instagram.com/direct/inbox. And it means that you can type, which you'll probably be able to do faster on a laptop than you will be over your phone. And you're not going to end up watching stories, because you don't want to watch stories on your laptop. It's just not aesthetic. It's just not nice visually for your own eyes. And you end up not going down the rabbit hole. So if you are somebody that has a lot of DMs to work your way through, and I typically do that in the morning and go through them all, because I'll maybe have feedback for the podcast or whatever's been released overnight. And if somebody's taking the time to listen to an hour of me and a guest, and they're giving me feedback on it, I'm going to take time to give them a proper reply. But if I was to do that just on my phone, best believe my chimp brain is going to tell me to go and look at some stories, to look at some reels, what's on the feed, and then I lose more time. So I definitely recommend, if anyone has a lot of replies or conversations to have, to use their laptop or their a browser to deal with DMs.
It's definitely a good tip. Thank you very much for watching part 2 of the podcast. If you'd like to see part 3, click right here. If you're new, subscribe. And if you enjoyed it, drop a like below. Thank you.